All right, 2 Kings chapter 20. Let's call this one Purpose, Letterman Part 2. A little bit more of a discussion on presumption, as we mentioned. King Hezekiah, this time having been relieved of the stress of being invaded by the Assyrians, is now afforded an opportunity to possibly recover some of that feeling of what it was like during his early years of success. But as things go, if your life is anything like mine, my periods of peace never seem to last as long as I would like them to, and Hezekiah's is going to be interrupted by sickness. And this chapter is going to be relatively straightforward in its structure. It is going to be Hezekiah appealing to God to give him mercy to live from this sickness, as God sends Isaiah to tell Hezekiah to get his house in order because he's not going to live through this one. And the second half of the chapter is after God hears his prayers for mercy, he is going to get visitors from Babylon who want to wish him well, even though it's not going to turn out well. And so ultimately, the Chronicles gives us more insight, helping us understand that between these two halves of the story of Hezekiah's recovery and his congratulations from Babylon is woven in a description of his struggle with pride. And we are going to see that this period of sickness, recovery, and congratulations is really God helping to show whether or not Hezekiah has overcome the pride that he has developed once he is now relieved of his enemies, able to go back to feeling the joy of his glory days and the euphoria he is possibly now feeling as God has given him relief from his problems with the Assyrians. But understand, the Chronicles is going to give us a phrase that actually kind of gives me the chills, and it is God left Hezekiah to himself. As 2 Chronicles 32 verse 31 will say, to test him and to know all that was in his heart. It frightens me because there are times when I am feeling better than I actually am, because I am not always aware of what is in my blind spots. Way more importantly than with regard to when I'm driving in a car, but with regard to my actual self-awareness. And so at times like this, when I see God helping one of his leaders work through a character defect, the whole concept of God leaving him to himself makes me shudder about times when God leaves me to myself, and reminds me of those times when David prayed, God, set a guard over my mouth. It's not just my mouth. I need my mouth and my heart guarded, but more importantly, cleansed. Because even though I shudder to think what would happen if God put me on display after leaving me to myself, the deeper issue is I need those rough spots cleaned out. And so one of the reasons why this story might give me extra cause to pause is actually seeing the way in which Hezekiah, possibly too happy about how far he's come, understanding his past struggles, is now sharing way too much information about how successful he is at the moment with people he really doesn't know that well. And so God is going to send Isaiah to Hezekiah after his new Babylonian friends have left, to let him know that they're going to be back, and they're going to be back looking for his stuff. And not only are they going to be looking for it, they're going to get it. So as much as God delivered him out of the hands of the Assyrians, Hezekiah, in focusing too much on past and present success, is going to essentially self-destruct and lose everything that God helped him protect not long ago. But the upside is it is not going to happen in his day, because God is going to show him mercy, quite possibly for all the years he spent restoring Judah to where it should have been. God is going to allow him to pass in peace, but he's going to bring the trouble in the days of his descendants, as we will see in the very next chapter, as his son Manasseh essentially takes Judah back off the rails, leaving us this observation. Even though we don't know whether Hezekiah's pride set an example that helped encourage Manasseh to take Judah back off the rails, this chapter might also point us back to times when God has encouraged his leaders to make sure that they are complete, understanding that Hezekiah doesn't have to worry about whether the undercurrent of his success was a pride that set a horrible example for his kid, if he prayed to God not only for success, but for success handled with the kind of character that made a completeness that set a healthy example for his next generation, no matter which way they decided to go.